So many different people have been telling us this.
Yeah.
From so many different directions.
Oh, yeah. Well, you know, even the Dalai Lama, the Mayans, the Buddhists, the Hopis, the Kogis, Edgar Cayce, the Bible, Revelations. I mean, you could point in any
artificial
direction.
Intelligence.
Yeah, yeah.
At what point do the computers do they start thinking?
Well, that's a good question. I don't think we're very far off from that. And you know, there are groups of scientists that are pushing for the event horizon when artificial intelligence literally takes over.
Neural networking.
Yeah, so they want it to solve the problems that mankind has created.
Right.
But the problem with that is it creates a potential for a matrix type of a society, and who's to say that the computers are going to do the right thing by human standards?
Well, you know the myth of the golem?
What's that? Tell me.
Golem. In Hebrew legend, there was a great rabbi named Rabbi Lowe in Prague, and he created this big kind of clay human being that, with some magical spells, he endowed it with life. And it, you know, was this huge giant that went through the ghetto, and it would take care of things, you know, clean things and kept order and so forth, until slowly it devolved, and he had to wipe it out. And the words he wrote on the forehead to bring it to life was Emmet, and he took off the first letter, so it became Meth. So he originally wrote the word truth, but changing one word, it was lies. The reason I meant is the golem becomes the origin of, like, so many myths you have, like Mickey Mouse as the magician in Sorcerer's Apprentice, where at first it's good, but eventually, hey, you know, you get overrun by the brooms, you know.
Right.
Right? Or Frankenstein, it was the golem. Well, when Israel got their first IBM computer, they called it Golem number 1.
Wow.
So, you know, to them, they felt the computers were the beginning of the golem.
Interesting.
And that it's this nice thing, but eventually, you know, you may have to go, whoops, stand back.
Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah.
No kidding.
Yeah.
And, of course, if you want to go down that road, you can talk about nanotechnology and so on and so forth.
Well, you know, it's interesting that we're talking about technology at all. It used to be the MIT, Massachusetts Institute of Technology, was one of the few places to study technology because it used to be science and technology. And science was the dominant. And now technology seems to be the dominant of the two. And so that science, which is to say knowing and knowledge, learning, is taking the back seat to tools, to stuff.
You know?
You know.
Yeah, that doesn't seem like a good direction.
I don't know, but I read recently that I think it's AT&T or Sprint and Disney have invested $2 billion to get kids at the age of 12 onto cell phones.
Oh my goodness!
And I don't know whether do you think the electromagnetic frequency affects kids more? I've read that it does.
I would think so, and it's said to be pretty dangerous to the brain.
Yeah.
Well, advertisers are gearing babies and 1 and 2 years old for cereal sales. So
1 and 2.
Yeah, they're starting out really early. So we're being bombarded.
Yep.
Yeah. So I think there's some major shifts and changes that need to be made, and I don't know how that would come about, or, the methodology, but it does seem that we've gone way askew, and we're completely unbalanced on just about every level that you can imagine.
Yep.
Well, so to tie that into Buddhism, now Buddhism is a way to achieve balance, isn't it? Didn't Buddha talk about the middle way and so on and so forth?
Some people call Buddhism the middle way. Buddhism is a made-up word in the West. They don't even use it. With ism. Was Jesus Christian? No, he was Jewish.
No.
No. Gandhi says, "What religion is God?" The middle way is likened to a lute string. If it's too loose, it doesn't sound. And if it's too tight, it snaps. So, you don't want to have extremes.
Right.
Although the middle way as a philosophical tradition is profound. We in the West think in terms of Aristotle, it either is too tight or it's too loose. It's either this or it's that. The middle way in Buddhism can say, A is A is not A, because you can't have A without not A. A is neither A nor not A.
Okay.
Because these are just categories.
Right.
These are just ideas. And then the fourth one is A is neither A and not A, nor A and nor A, not A. I mean, all of this is just words.
Yeah.
But that each of those, the tetralemma of Nagarjuna, can apply to a specific philosophical situation. Like fuzzy logic was adopted by Japan 5 or 10 years earlier than the West because they already have that kind of thinking in their culture through Buddhism and their language. And so they were able to devise all sorts of interesting things like thermostats that can sort of adjust in between certain temperature standards rather than being set at a certain single point.
Right.
Because they could operate by fuzzy logic or a camera lens that, could sort of pick a range between two numbers rather than have to be in a specific number. Whereas it took us 5 or 10 years later because for us, we're locked into this. It's either this or it's that. Fuzzy logic is, it's a little, the door is half open, half closed.
Yeah.
Half and half. So, balance is very much about really being balanced. It isn't just between this and that. It's just it's in all ways. There's harmony in its fullest senses.
Well, how does one go about creating that harmony? I guess part of that is beginning to view oneself as a spiritual being having a human experience. That would be part of it, yes?
Yes.
As opposed to a person with a name and a profession and a career and a handful of labels that are really just labels and words.
Yeah, and that are just very kind of fixing something at a certain point.
Yeah.
That's so specific it's redundant.
Right.
As opposed to seeing ourselves as the universe using us as its neurology to experience itself.
Yeah.
Hello?
Yes. There's something I wanted to ask you about. This is something that I've seen being thrown around a lot in the groups. A lot of the people in the New Age movement and other movements talk about karma a lot. What is your sense of what that is and how it might work if it is something?
I'm glad you asked. There's a number of misconceptions that come up about Buddhism, and one of them is, for example, the Afghani people have the situation they have because it's their karma. They brought it on themselves.
Right.
Karma is a word that existed before the Buddha, and the Buddhist spin on it is a little different from the usual Hindu interpretation. So, to be very clear, before the Buddha, there was a recognition that there are causes and effects. And the Buddha's emphasis is that we each have a personal autonomy that's kind of responsible for our own path. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people, if I think I'm reading you correctly, as in the New Age movement or elsewhere, because karma has become a ubiquitous word. Everybody uses it. It's in the American Heritage Dictionary now. Right. Have a kind of a sense that karma is fate, and it's predetermined. And well, that's my karma. There's nothing I can do about it.
Right.
Right?
Yeah, that does seem to be the consensus.
Yeah, whereas I think it's exactly the opposite of what the Buddha is about. The Buddha is telling us, for example, it's like the little haiku, the person that shouts, "Stop shoving!" the loudest on the bus shoves the hardest.
Yes, that does seem to be the way it is.
And then that's their karma. The person who is angry all the time has a reason to be angry because they are creating a karma of anger. Yeah. In which, the waitress will give them exactly what they didn't want, exactly the way they didn't want it, exactly the way they didn't want it the last time. The same way as, there's just, nothing is right to them. They're always angry, so they're unpleasant to be with, and because they're unpleasant to be with, things go wrong, because nobody wants to really be, they're just creating disharmony.
Oh, yeah, I had an uncle like that.
It becomes a self-validating, endless loop.
Yes.
And there's that karma, or, there's our karma that as human beings we're endowed with the capabilities of boundless things, as people who listen to your show are well aware. Vast, amazing potentials, which, we could call our Buddha nature.
I like that.
Better word. And karma is, awakening to the kind of moral cause and effect that everything and this is the interesting part too, everything that we not only enact physically and do, but also say and think have an equal effect, which becomes a new cause, which becomes a new effect, and becomes part of a huge web of interconnectedness. And I say it's interesting that it's what we think and what we say just as much as what we do.
Yes, absolutely.
Because it's all energy.
Oh, absolutely. I totally agree with you on that one. Would you take it a step further to say that is connected to the idea that we create our own reality?
Well, very easily could say that. Although I don't want to put it into this deterministic or moralistic kind of bag. But you could say, for example, that nirvana is the reality that one enjoys when one has let go of the needless suffering that one doesn't need to perpetuate.
I like that.
Okay. You could call it the Pure Land, for example. Or the reverse, that one goes around endlessly in this kind of rat cage that one is spinning by one's own action when the door to the rat cage is left open.
Yeah. That's a good one.
So many different people have been telling us this.
Yeah.
From so many different directions.
Oh, yeah. Well, you know, even the Dalai Lama, the Mayans, the Buddhists, the Hopis, the Kogis, Edgar Cayce, the Bible, Revelations. I mean, you could point in any
artificial
direction.
Intelligence.
Yeah, yeah.
At what point do the computers do they start thinking?
Well, that's a good question. I don't think we're very far off from that. And you know, there are groups of scientists
by Lowe and Prague, and he created this big kind of clay human being that, with some magical spells, he endowed it with life, and it, you know, is this huge giant that.
And who's to say that the computers are going to do the right thing by human standards?
Well, you know the myth of the golem?
What's that? Tell me.
Golem. In Hebrew legend, there was a great rabbi named Rabbi
that are pushing for the event horizon when artificial intelligence literally takes over.
Neural networking.
Yeah, so they want it to solve the problems that mankind has created. But the problem with that is it creates a potential for a matrix type of a society